Well, it's time to go over some conspiracies. I know that people don't want to believe in conspiracies, but welcome everybody to Mud Flood Was Armageddon. The Mud Flood was the Armageddon, the biggest conspiracy of all time. The mud flood was the Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they want to tell you that they added 1,000 years. The golden age is past, and it's a flat earth nation. This is a web of lies. Me and my friends never going to tell you anything else. I want to show you. I got a disclaimer to show you. But, un momento, I need to set up the share screen. I thought I did that. So there's your fair use thing. Some of the pictures that we'll have to spend a little bit of time with reading, but okay, I showed you that. Stands to look again. Cousins Walk, we talked about that. I am not going to go through them all like that. Where are the ones? So here's China's destiny in 1947. This is going to lead back to a big conspiracy. China, 1947, still propping up Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek. He was in charge of China, and then he wasn't. Here's 3 reasons why Americans, they say, are prone to believe in government conspiracy theories. Well, there has been MK Ultra, assassination attempts on Fidel Castro, Watergate, Tuskegee syphilis, experiments, torture. They lied about Saddam Hussein played a role in the 9/11 attack. So that's why, because proven conspiracies. Sedition Act of 1918, COINTELPRO. There are a lot of things. And then they had Alex Jones references numerous conspiracy theories, convinces in his supporters to support Ron Paul, who told the truth about 9/11 was an inside job, over the pornography-loving Mitt Romney of the Mormon Church, who made a fortune selling it at their Marriott hotels. They believe in it because everything is a conspiracy. Let's see, look at this. There was a study, climate change fraud, suppress a cure for cancer. That's what conspiracy people believe in. Grimes' study did not consider exposure by sources outside of the alleged conspiracy, whistleblowers and the stuff. That's how they said, oh, that's a conspiracy. By definition, and are wrong by an order of magnitude about Bletchley Park, which remained a secret far longer than Grimes' calculations predicted. That you can't keep a secret if all these people are involved. Well, in Bletchley Park, they all knew that they were tapped by the spies of the Soviet Union, but they didn't tell anybody. Nobody knew. So his thing doesn't work. A joint session of the Congress on September 11th, 1990. RJ, did your ears pick up? 1990, September 11. Mr. Speaker, within 3 days, we're sending troops into Kuwait. Proud of his country. Once again, Americans have stepped forward to share a tearful goodbye with their families before leaving for a strange and distant shore. At this very moment, they serve together with Arabs, Europeans, Asians, and Africans in defense of principles and the dream of a new world order. That is why they sweat and toil in the sand and the heat and the sun, but that's not a conspiracy. Was this same speech, I believe, a new partnership of nations has begun, and we stand today at a unique and extraordinary moment. The crisis in the Persian Gulf, as grave as it is, also offers a rare opportunity to move toward an historic period of cooperation out of these troubled, chaotic times. Our fifth objective: a new world order can emerge, a new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace. Vote for me. George Bush's quote, not the law of the jungle. George Bush Sr. said, we have before us an opportunity to forge for ourselves and future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. Huh. And there's a picture I thought you'd like because this thing goes on for a couple of miles, or no, 3/4 of a mile. Long way. This is the where it's leading to. Can't get enough of your old world pictures because the mud flood was Armageddon. Now, I wanted to put this quote from George Bush about read my lips, no new taxes. Because the idea was, and they say no, and they'll push again, and I'll say to them, read my lips. Well, if you read his lips, what would be the difference between no new taxes and no new taxes? If one was KNOW, no new taxes, they all knew he was going to raise the taxes because it's not in writing. It's read my lips. Know the new taxes. They were all going to laugh. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. That's what they say. That's what I say. So here's some of the famous people that are in a meeting at its convention in 1922 where they were going to pull the wool over your eyes, then rub your face in it. No, it wouldn't be cashmere. Personalities intending, Albert Einstein, Thomas Mann, Sigmund Freud, other people, uh, anybody that's anybody, and Charles de Gaulle and Winston Churchill at the bottom. In 1927, dealing with people, the heroes of World War I who would become enemies in World War II, an important member. I looked this up. Alpha Galates, we'll look at it. George Monty was initiated into the Kabbalistic Order of the Rosicrucians by Josephine Paladin, Josephine, and then into Martinianism by Pappus. There's a whole lot of Aleister Crowley going on here in 1934 when these leaders of France are doing these things. Chicago Tribune correspondent, is that legit? Probably not. Rosicrucians, here's another one. All but two of the purported Grand Masters of the Priory of Zion are also found on list of alleged imperators, and distinguished members of the ancient mystical order Rosicrucian, AMORC, OTO, OKR plus C. It's those guys. They did it. It was in 1908, the International Masonic and Spiritual Conference. It's Blavatsky leading into Aleister Crowley, the only guy with multiple pictures on the cover of not the Rolling Stones Lonely Heart Club Band. That would be the Beatles, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band. He got 3 pictures. Crowley there, he's a big deal because he teaches them to love themselves above anything else and have whatever. There are these guys. Here's one. The pact argued based on the four orders that correspond to the Hindu caste system that a division of people into order is natural and conforms with tradition, and set out a program for invisible revolution or revolution from above, meaning taking over a state from within by infiltrating the dog catcher offices. No, the higher offices. They did it, man. The Bolsheviks did it. The fascists in Italy, the socialists and Nazis in Germany, the whatever they had going in British, the homosexual pedophilic love fest in charge, where they would just let anybody do anything as long as they didn't talk about what they did on what do they call it in Afghanistan for the 20 years we were losing that war. I believe they called it Free Love Thursday or something like that. So that is the Brotherhood Polaris. They looked it up. Now I don't know this Ordo Ab Chow, but that's we looked at a couple of them. The same suspect collaboration that took place, what I was just telling you about World War One, between the leaders of the German conservative revolution, the Hohe, the Cosmic Circle, the Frankfurt School, and the School of Wisdom, extend to the synacrist and the pro-Nazi regime that ruled France, the pro-Nazi regime that ruled France during World War II, known as Vichy. Our friends, many of whose participants would later contribute to the founding of the European Union after the war. Named after its seat in government, the city of Vichy, headed by Marshal Philippe Pétain. Philippe Pétain lived almost 100 years, a hero of World War One, the minister of France, was brought back in as the oldest head of state ever in France, way after the war. Let's see what this one says. If such a record leads the reader to question the effectiveness of our influence at Vichy, he still must ask whether things would not have been much worse had we not been there. But the behavior of the Vichy government was dictated by considerations of force rather than diplomatic etiquette. So their argument in 1947 after the war is, well, we don't have any proof that we made it worse. Sure, we helped the Nazis. Four major arguments to explain America's recognition of the pro-Nazi government. Let's look at the second argument. The second argument says it is, of course, the least serious. It can hardly be said that our support of a fascist government could help, open quote, to keep alive the sentiment of liberty and equality, close quote, in the French people. It created confusion and discouragement, whereas a moral condemnation through non-recognition would have helped crystallize the positions against the collaboration. But instead, our continued recognition was a question not of ideology, but of morality. It was like, how are they supposed to believe capitulation and supporting the fascist would keep alive the sentiment of liberty and equality? It didn't make any sense. Now, here's how they finished it up. If Britain went up under, we ourselves would soon be challenged along our own coast. The State Department began to negotiate with Pétain, that's the guy who helped the Nazis, and Weygand, reasonably confident that these two old World War heroes would keep their word and refuse to collaborate against the free world. But they did. They went with the Nazis. But when Pierre Laval, who detested the British and openly espoused the Nazis, replaced Bedoin as the foreign minister, and the decision as to who would organize French resistance in North Africa. Remember, the United States didn't start fighting on the ground until mid or early summer 1943 in North Africa against the Germans, where they knew what they were doing because the French were telling them. Became urgent in North Africa. Public opinion in the United States was aroused. Many were dismayed, feeling we were confusing the French, not comforting them, that the United States was making a mistake not to support Charles de Gaulle and the Free French instead of supporting the Nazis. Professor Langer shows that, in fact, the United States had little choice, even to the necessity of working with the admiral of the Nazis, who had sympathized with the Nazis almost as openly as the other Nazi lover. And he concluded that for intelligence purposes, if for no other choice, our policy of supporting the Nazis in World War II is justified. It started out with that, it fell in 1940, and you just saw it. North Africa, summer of 1942, helped the French military. It didn't work out well because it was open helping Nazis. This guy's talking about the farm crisis in Arkansas. They're losing money. So they needed a shot of his $250,000 combine working. Dude, that is your wheat crop? That is not a wheat crop. That's somebody picking weeds that lettuce paid to not grow something this year. I don't know. What if it is? It's a bad crop. Pockets of heating and cooling. I was into that. So the Nabumba effect, 10 phenomena on Earth, atmospheric rivers. No reason. And one that hit Laurel Canyon, Beverly Crest, that has predicted. They're explaining there is no way that the temperature can drop as fast as it's been dropping and rain can go in so many places. Well, maybe they never heard of chemtrails. The United States fighting the legacy, trying to hide the shame of how they openly experimented on people by giving them syphilis and then didn't tell them for over 20 years. And that smiling girl, she was there at the beginning, she was there at the end. She watched them die. But it was a job. So it's here we go with the New World Order, conspiracy theories, politics, professional wrestling. I guess that's the thing of books, films, songs, New World Order by the righteous, poor righteous teachers. Okay, let's look at some more systematic conspiracy theories of the New World Order. Apocalyptic millennial Christian eschatologies. They have them all, don't they? The book of Daniel, Ezekiel, Revelation. Uh-oh, there's one that doesn't belong. The Catholic Church, John Nelson Darby, the Plymouth Brethren movement, the starter of the speaking in tongues, the Adventist type theology so popularized in 1848. Looking for a new Bretton Woods, a new world order. Glenn Beck, watch out for the lone wolf. We're looking at what is the new world order conspiracy theories. They don't believe in it. They think it's just a joke. The charismatic false prophet wrote a book about it, so it can't be true. Masonic Lodge, going back to the 17th, it was the Bavarian Illuminati, protocols of the learned elder of Zion. It ruled in the United States. We were a country that believed in eugenics. We had white only better fountains. They couldn't play baseball together. They prop up these guys like he's the smartest writer in the world when all he was esoteric sex freak. but the popularizing the new world order. I mean, I've been dealing with this guy all my life. Same here. They want to say it's not true. Let's go to Atlantis. So after this, there's fringe theory, furtive fallacy. Let's look at this one. A conspiracy theory. You've heard them all before. Generally designed to resist falsification, either by evidence against them or lack of evidence for them. They say that they're reinforced by circular reasoning, unless they're the ones that they pointed out to us when they say, why do some people believe it? Well, because of COINTELPRO, MK Ultra. There's so many where they had to admit, for your own good, we had to lie to you. So that's why people are suspicious and believe in conspiracy theories. They're the ones that don't understand circular reasoning. I just showed you how they admit, okay, they lied, so they have a few conspiracies. Now they think we're always lying. Well, it's up to you to prove that you're not lying. That's the way we look. This this they prop up the 33. No way in God's green earth did 330,000 deaths from AIDS get caused. An estimate, they put that out there because that's them telling you it's all under control if you're one of the people on the wide road. Warren report, man, that's they name the conspiracies in that, popularizing the term. The Warren Report, my goodness, Gerald Ford was in on that. Gerald Ford, who became the president of the United States, allegedly came to power because he sent off for one of those ads in the back of the pornographic magazine that said, "We sell the forbidden, the banned, the pornography that you can't buy at the store. So send for a free catalog." And somebody knocked, this is the rumor that somebody knocked on, "Hi, are you Gerald Ford?" "Yeah." And they said, "Well, now you work for us. Good news is we like those kind of things too." And he basically said, "I'll do whatever you want." And so he became the president of the United States out of nowhere, just shot up. He was the great football player from Grand Haven, Michigan. No, no, no. Grand Rapids. Anyway, so here's a list of some. Hey, now here's one, new chronology. And I was going to tell you, you know why after almost 10 years now, you don't see the mud flood was Armageddon thing on Wikipedia as a conspiracy theory? That they added 1,000 years, that the golden ages passed, and they tie it to the Bible? Because when they do that, they're not going to be able to prop up Nephilim clown guy or JT who loves JC, who is the charismatic, friends with the people that cast out demons every 40 a weekend. They're going to go through the history of it and find out, and they won't be able to shadow ban do re mi anymore. And I'm going to tell them, hey, this is how it happened. That's why it's not on Wikipedia, in my opinion. No, I didn't say my humble opinion, because I have a meek opinion, but I'm not stupid. My opinions are pretty good. Chess master Gary Kasparov sure popped up the Russian version of New Chronology. Oh, yeah. Hopefully, I'm sharing the screen. Morai mythology. Look at one of those nails. How to travel the sea, I'm sure. Tartarian Empire. We'll look at that one. Aviation. How can those aircrafts hold all that stuff? What happened to you know, what's going on with these? Conspiracies, conspiracies, conspiracies. Same with the other, the John Birch Society. They had some mysterious plane crash. Bill Clinton blackmailed and was energetically promoted. Black helicopters in America, the Clinton hit list, chemtrails. That's not true. Oh, sure. Atmospheric aerosol, strontium, barium. This is another one, Korean Flight '07. Uh, that's the one where the head of the one of the guys on it was the head of the John Birch Society, Larry McDonald, on the flight. Two other members of the House of Representatives were supposed to be on the same flight, but they canceled at the last moment. He was not only a member of the John Birch Society, he was the new chairman of said conspiracy loving group. The missing flight of Malaysian Flight 370, that was the one where they actually had the ability to digitize and let your phones and robots track everybody. The patents were listed. The five of the passengers died, and all of the rights went to the Carlyle Group and the Rothschilds through Freescale, Freescale, Freescale Semiconductors. Rush Limbaugh, New Coke, give me a break. Book of Revelation, there you go. We're getting closer. The Kennedy thing, Bay of Pigs. These people, Michael Jackson, Marilyn Monroe, all probably related. George Patton. Some people die early and leave confusing things. Revolution #9, a song by the Beatles. Strawberry Fields Forever. Glass Onion. I am the walrus. Cuckoo, cachoo. Well, Melania Trump's been replaced by a clone? That sounds like fake news. So, conspiracies about the Freemason, Jack the Ripper, the Titanic. I know you've heard them all, but you didn't hear the mud flood was Armageddon. There is no Trinity. There are no atomic weapons. They faked it all until now. If you've heard me, look at there. This just goes on because everything was a lie. Reptilian conspiracies, can't stand them. Communism, the Pope, Jesuit conspiracy theories. What conspiracy theories do you think are not true? I think it was an inside job. Racism, they think they're trying to hide the fact that we were so racist so recently. White genocide conspiracy theory. I look at this thing, it just keeps going. Because there are so many to worry about, talk about. But the big one is there's no Trinity, and to be a Christian now, you almost have to believe in it. The Tartarian Empire. They got 3 pictures now. They're going to show you there was a Tartary. The Caspian Sea is different. It was brought out to kind of prop up Moscow as a new Jerusalem. But it's a gift. How do things happen? A colossal mud flood. So they're getting close to where they're going to have to talk about it, don't they? I looked up this. Maybe you want to hear it.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this for us, the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in...
Okay, so they're into it. I was going to try to make a meme, but I didn't want to use the generator. All I wanted to say was, I told them to read my lips, and I would say, and I was going to change it to, KNOW. Know the new taxes, and they'd all think that was funny and laugh about it and go diddle little boys. But I didn't get a chance to do it.
Taxes, but I will, and the Congress will push me to raise taxes, and I'll say no, and they'll push, and I'll say no, and they'll push again, and I'll say to them, read my
To them.
lips. No new taxes.
That's how you smile, pro-lifers for Bush, when you're being lied to your face in 1988. Nothing good. It was a bad choice to. Oh, we shouldn't have picked him. I voted for him. I was all happy to vote for him. Remember that one where they showed the balloons coming down and Hillary was looking around going like, wow, what's going on? Huh. So we know about the syphilis. You know about the syphilis experiments in Tuskegee. What happened when they got exposed and they said, we don't think this guy should be doing this. They closed him down. They didn't put him in jail or anything. They moved him to Guatemala, where they had lesser, and they restarted the syphilis experiments. That's the cold-blooded facts.
Deeper into the Guatemalan countryside, I'm going to meet another former soldier infected by syphilitic prostitutes planted in the barracks by the doctors.
Ya vamos a llegar después del río. Mucho gusto, yo soy David, un periodista australiano.
Yo soy Manuel Guriel.
Mucho gusto y un placer conocerlo.
So they're still there. They made banana republics. This girl found it out by accident.
Syphilis.
This is Tuskegee, Alabama, where the Guatemalan experiments were hatched. The site of America's most infamous medical experiment, which began in the 1930s and ran until the 70s, with the unambiguous title, Untreated Syphilis in the Male Negro. Here, doctors found African Americans already infected with syphilis and then left them untreated so that they could monitor their progress. They never told them.
It's a shame. This girl was there from the 30s to the 70s. Her whole career in retirement was based on it. This girl found an interesting thing.
And then the other people, this is his wife. I don't know. We don't know what happened to the wives.
One of the doctors, John Cutler, still defended the Tuskegee study more than 20 years after it was exposed in the press and stopped, saying,
"These individuals were contributing towards the health of the black community, rather than simply serving as guinea pigs for the study."
Even then, Cutler didn't want him.
That's the same argument, Mr. Cutler, that they used when they were supporting the Nazis, and it was helping to instill that spirit of freedom and liberty.
His guinea pigs to be finally treated for the syphilis they'd carried for decades.
It would be undesirable to go ahead and use large amounts of penicillin to treat the disease because it would interfere with the study.
It was
So that's the guy that said, you know what, you shut me down, I'm going to Guatemala.
while researching Cutler's role in Tuskegee that Susan Reverby made the remarkable discovery last year that he was head of another, much more invasive experiment started in 1946 in Guatemala.
I was just completely shocked. I had spent, nearly 20 years explaining to everyone that no one had been given syphilis in Tuskegee, and here was a study with the title, Inoculation Syphilis, done by this man who had been involved in Tuskegee in the 60s, and then in the 90s is essentially justifying the study, and I was completely, nobody knew about this.
I didn't know about it.
Incluían ya sus hijos, pero todos están ya en la demanda.
So there's only a few survivors. They're not going to have to pay out that much.
Sincerely, John C. Cutler.
Deeper into the Guatemalan countryside, I'm going to meet another former soldier infected by syphilitic prostitutes planted that a then 10-year-old Marta Oriana says her nightmare began.
Y me acostaron en una camilla. Entonces un doctor estaba de este lado y el otro, y la enfermera me tenía agarrada la cabeza. Entonces ellos hicieron por abrirme las piernas, ¿verdad? Y yo no quería. Entonces yo como ni... Y me metían los dedos con amarillo.
Look, they know what they did, and they don't care. So here's that farm crisis, you know. It is a crisis.
In a functioning market, farmers with high input costs could just raise their selling prices. But on the selling side, they're getting squeezed just as hard by their buyers, the companies that control the global grain trade.
There's really about 4 big grain companies.
Ben Lilliston is a farm and trade policy analyst who's looked at the influence of big grain companies like Cargill, Bunge, and Archer Daniels Midland.
These 4 big grain companies control almost 80% of the market in the U.S., and in many regions of the country, there's only 1 or 2 of them. Farmers are relatively weak players.
They're being used so much.
Costs and the relationship to corporate consolidation of the farm economy. But it's just the latest in over a decade of similar federal investigations that have failed to stop mergers or break up existing monopolies.
The first thing we need to address is no competition. Because when there's no competition, I have no option, and I have to take whatever these people are willing to give me.
If the Trump administration responds to this crisis with another...
They will not. Check out these numbers.
High.
They're all in debt.
Facing pressure from farms...
For combines and go stand in a meeting is a big deal.
It was like a funeral in there. This is generations of farms teetering on the brink.
I'm in the worst shape right now that I've ever been in.
5 of my customers have committed suicide. That's how serious that is.
Without immediate government intervention, we're going to lose 30 to 40% of our farmers again this year. We lost 25 to 30% last year.
Farm debt is expected to reach $560 billion.
There's no way farmers can do this. They're living on the hopium, and they've been set up to lose.
The CIA Castro assassination plots as somewhat dubious, given his relative nobody status at the time. But again, here I am just spitballing. It is also equally likely that this mysterious William Caldwell was truly a nobody, and not a future general, nor the aforementioned J.C. King. Station Chief Caldwell was shuffled out after Castro took power, as the communists within the July 26th movement began to consolidate their power, and consequently, as the CIA's view of Castro's movement started to sour. The new station chief, James Knoll, was another relative nobody, who very well could have been fronting for the much higher profile officers that were brought in to work the Havana beat from 1950.
This was all mafia stuff. It was all going to be the mafia. What is this? The Germans' boys club? Cheering revolutionaries in 1848? Modern academics ready to fight the Black Forest. They're still there. Student corps. People that do that academic fencing, scars left on their cheek. They rule the world. They were all in the Freemasons. They all thought they were so smart. They were going to make this plan, worshiping Satan, developing nations, and singing nationalistic, patriotic songs. It's only in 11 languages that the people get to even know about this group of people, the Catholic fraternities, 1,600 of them, about 1,000 of them in Germany to this day. They say they're grassroots, but First one they say was established in 1812. You know it was established at the Bavarian Illuminati, where they all have the same root. The root is evil. It is Satan. Let's let the ladies in. That we have to teach them how to swoon and to realize that the only way to make them happy is to manipulate them into an orgasm. And then they think, well, that's good. We need this all the time. Now, here's a festival first held in 1801, incorporated nationalistic democratic festival, Hamburg Castle. We're going to take over the world. We're going to do that whole secret society thing. They did it. These guys started in Germany. It became eugenics. The people loved it. They loved Darwinism. They loved the globe. So John Cutler spread venereal disease in the United States, spread syphilis on purpose in Guatemala. Also did the Kentucky, the Tuskegee. I don't know why I almost said Kentucky. Just a young man that was put in charge that basically said, I'll do it, and defended it all his life. Terre Haute prison experiments. That doesn't sound good, does it? But they didn't care. Now, the secret of NIM and the rat studies, the National Institute of Mental Health, that's what it was then. We don't know how many people they really gave. That's quite a difference, right? 1,500 to 5,000. Could be many, many more. But we know they didn't keep their Hippocratic oath. And we know they're still working on it today. So these experiments continued until 1953, where they were told about it. Now they're up to 5,500, but they only treated 700 of them. They're all dead now. You can't pay them off and say we're sorry. To like 9 of them, I think, made it. Don't quote me on that. It was these guys. They're doing it. Now, there is the Synaptic Pact. We'll look at that. That was the historical theory that the surrender of the Nazi France was as a result of a conspiracy by French industrial banking interests. How come they can believe in conspiracies and you can't? I think that's crazy. Now I looked up the Bank of Worm. We'll look at that. I know it looks like worms, but they'll say it's Worm because it's funny. Why would you name, hey, we're the Bank of Worms? It's funny to me in America anyway. So they claim to be the legitimate French government, and that was denied by Free France that said, well, at least we pretended to not be Nazis. They maintained that the Vichy was an illegal government run by traitors during the war. But unfortunately, the Vichy government was already internationally recognized, mostly by the United States, that said, hey, look, they're pro-Nazi, so what? It's France, baby. There's little doubt that at the beginning, Vichy was both legal and legitimate. It was this guy's massive popularity from World War I when they put him back in charge and he said, okay, we'll be Nazis. And that lasted all the way. And then all of a sudden, it was like the French resistance, we were fighting the whole time. Sure you were, but it looked like this. In the meantime, I'm in charge. We're helping the Nazis. Yay, Nazis. But they were being blackmailed. That's their excuse now. We had to do it or they would kill our people. The other rumors are that people were lining up when they came into Paris to prove they were pure. They wanted to get those papers that said, I'm one of the pure white people. People in Japan believed in Darwinism and that they were the top race. People in China believed in Darwinism. They were the top race. Irish, Italy, they all had their things that said we're number one. It led to a war that was faked. Now, here's the 80. Oh boy, now that's not too in your face. French people, well, they ran out so they wouldn't have to vote against the constitutional change that effectively dissolved the France and established the Nazi regime of the guy who helped the Nazis, who was their war hero from World War One. It were these guys did it. And it was all eugenics. It was all planned for today. The race war that's coming, the fight against the socialists, the radicals, the Nazis. Should we have BRICS dollars, gold dollars, petrodollars? So, they wanted to make it legal. They know who was against it. They did, I believe, execute a few for treason, but most of them just went to business. All these guys did it. Some of them have their own Wikipedia page. Elected, then elected mayor, Democratic left, parliamentary union. Voted against it. Not too much of an explanation that he voted for the government that was national socialists. So here's the main guy, or the main town. No, this is where he lived. Oh no, let's start at the top. Big hero, but ended up being a collaborator with the Nazis. Well, we knew that. Went to a military academy. I think he was an orphan. The Lion of Verdun. Again, raised by 5 children. It says father previously lived in Paris. Great uncle, a Catholic priest, served in the Grand Army. His mother died very young, raised by relatives, attended, of course, a Roman Catholic boarding school in this fancy town. Intention of preparing for the military. And they certainly must have propped him up because he was young. He became, he was there for them to do what he had to do. Let's look at this fort. This is that one I showed you that had that really weird road. This is where it was going. That's some real switchbacks. Of course, I think anyway, mud flood. It's the Bible town. These are what they describe, those cities that were built on mountains and their foundations went down to the sea. Something to do with the head of the France. This is one of the border towns in France, the Vichy government. This is that road. Supposedly carved out. 1,200 meters. 5,200, isn't that about a mile? So more than half a mile long. That's not really a good picture. I think I have some more later. But here's some more of becoming a man, just a little bit of the singing wells. So this is 5 years old. I showed you the one from, I think, 9 years. Things have gotten a little bit worse, but these guys are still working. I can see the difference in...
6 men pass buckets from hand to hand, bringing the water up to an intermediate reservoir. From there, 3 men fill the water troughs.
We didn't notice this earlier, that when you move away from it, they line up to feed it every day. The people now like to carry the guns, don't
The dry
they?
lake of Chubahir, which the Borana called Chalbi, is no man's land where cattle thieves lurk. Here the Borana and Hamer fight over pasture lands and water with guns. There are frequent clashes between the 2 enemies. Wario has walked the entire day alongside the camels. He's exhausted and sore all over.
Show me the guns. Quite a difference from, just a few years of everybody working together.
Lafti tun gaafas kun hamara kanaaf booran kan jidduu rakkoo jira warri kun waliin dhaga'u warri boorana alaaga tan jira kaalleeni kutaa salphaa marra kan dheete hin salphata bisaan kan cufu nama gubbaa bula.
Wow. It's a world of conspiracies, and it's not going to get better. There's a better picture of that road. I do think people need to prepare to not have the comforts, but know that God has left a place where it might not be your normal life, but you're going to have to live it. Do you want to live, or do you want to just have it easy? Now, here is that Bank Farms privatized. It became Deutsche Bank. That's the bank that sponsored Donald Trump's first money ventures in New York City, an independent bank in 1964, Operation Torch in 1942. So they got that. That was a kind of a Nazi thing too, wasn't it? Operation Torch. German, French colonies allied with the Nazis, but loyalties of the population were mixed. Reports indicated they might support the Allies. You might have heard of President Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander at the time, approved plans for a three-prong attack, Casablanca. You might have heard of that famous movie, but it wasn't working good. This was 1942, November late. They couldn't, they're getting betrayed by their allies. Crazy Operation Torch. It didn't work out quite the way they wanted. This bank, how did this thing start? Only 1928, and it was there to fund after the war, funded by the Hippolyte Worms. That's an interesting name. A division of Worms and Sy, French paper company. Maybe they made money. During World War II, the company was placed under German supervision, and I guess they would help the Germans. Became independent in 1964. Anyway, it was acquired. It's Deutsche Bank now. And like I said, they're the ones that helped. Did we doubt the book? This is where I got it. Arvici Gamble. It basically says, there's no proof that us helping the Nazis was bad. We had to do it. That's what they're always going to say. I looked up another one. The Germans had arranged their occupation currency, charged them on the clearing accounts in friendly countries. In occupied countries, currency was drawn against the occupation cost. So they were basically saying, you owe us because we're occupying you. And after the war is when they wrote the history, basically explaining away any of the problems. And if you doubt it, you're the problem. The federal vision is the problem with the golden age past theology. And it goes back to what I said. I was a member of this church for quite a long time. Other people, Orthodox Presbyterians, there were people trying to do it. The post-millennialist aspect, covenant theology, more Trinitarian than ever. It was Doug Wilson and those people, although he has distanced himself from what they call federal vision and the new perspective of Paul. He didn't really distance himself from it hard. I think, where is the, I hate to do this, but it gave a quote, said that he basically, he's still writing there, that he doesn't consider himself, this is a long thing for Wikipedia, to talk about the new perspective on Paul and a internal argument between Presbyterians. Doug Wilson noted 6 foundational tenets of the new perspective of Paul. He affirmed the correctnesses of the first 3 points. Most federal vision proponents have publicly said they appreciate much of what the heretic N.T. Wright, who doesn't trust Paul, has taught. So it's in here where Doug Wilson doesn't believe it. He called him a Christian gentleman. He discovered who Saul was, an evil man, and one who in substance and at the fundamental level despised and hated the Torah. I don't believe that even he went that far. Mark Home and Rich Lusk have defended Wright against his Reformed critics. That would have been me. Horn has said that the new perspective on Paul is not a rejection of Reformed doctrine. Well, it certainly is. Lusk had said virtually the same thing, saying that Wright is a true Scripture alone Protestant. He is not. Doug Wilson propped him up. It was unbelievable what was going on, which is why the Lord lifted the veil, and you have a chance to do what's real, what's true, and that is to believe the Bible the way it is written. I'm not saying we need to start a Wikipedia page, but we need to understand that this grew out of the stones crying out, that the stones are actually reserved in judgment, that the reason water could come out of them is because the titans of old, the Elohim of the council of Psalm 82, who were told you have a chance, because all of this physicality is an object lesson to the spirit world where Satan and angels are in open rebellion, or were, and we're taught a lesson that you think you could run this, go ahead. He set them up, said, give them rules, and they didn't do it right. So God said, you're going to die like men. Adam was created from dust. Adam and Eve were made in the image in Genesis 1. In Genesis 2, Adam was made from the clay, and the Father blew spirit into him. His wife, much later, after being told, it's not good for you to be alone, I'll fix that later, but we have to go to a Garden of Eden, name all the animals, then I'm going to put you in a deep sleep. Took the rib out of her, did not have to blow the spirit into it. It's a different world. We know now that when the Bible says your treasure is your heart, that once you've been changed, you realize you've been given talent, certain soils. You have capabilities that some wheat might only be able to grow 30, 60, or 90, whereas you're a 100 yield Christian. You don't judge them. They're doing the best they can with the wheat being wheat, growing in soil to its potential. If you've been given enough to where you can supply, here's 5 talents, get 10, you're only rewarded if you get the 10. Let's close that out by looking at in our Bible Hub studies. In Malachi chapter 3, I believe it's verse 17, but it'll be right around in there. Who will be mine? When God said that, they will be mine, says the Lord of hosts, in the day that I make up my treasured possession. and I will spare them that will be his, they will be mine. He's going to spare them as a man spares his son who serves him. That's how you can tell the distinction between the righteous and the wicked. You don't talk about it. You've been called to study to show yourself approved, work to show yourself approved, been told that before the foundation of the world, there are works that have been assigned to you that you have to do. You've been told in the book of James to know to do good and do it not. It's counted as sin. If you're not living up to your potential, who will? Who will worry about your soul if you're thinking, I think I'm doing good enough? Don't ask me how do I know the will of God? It's explained in the Bible. Here's the will of God: present your body a living sacrifice. This is what's holy and acceptable, and the will of God starts with understanding you've been lied to. The truth is, this is a flat earth nation. The golden age is past because the mud flood was Armageddon. The whole added 1,000-year thing, the whole forgetting that at the end of the 1,000 years was another catastrophe. Put in your sickle and reap. The earth was emptied again, except for a staggering remnant of fugitives that seems like we may have been genetically altered ourselves. I know we've got orphan trained brains, and it's all leading to the truth that the mud flood was Armageddon. You've been called, you've been chosen, you've been elect from before the foundation of the earth to make a decision that seems like it's your own free will that Jesus Christ is Lord. You're going to believe it in your heart and confess it with your mouth, and then do whatever you can to bring glory to his name. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arriba. Dulce. Ciao. Sayonara. Avedese. Nakame. Adios. That's how I like to say goodbye.